Did I say we're bringing Hexy back? No, 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 no. Clearly what I meant was, I'm too hexy for this coven, too hexy for this coven, too hexy for this coven, put the witch in the oven. Hello, everyone, and welcome back down here to the Gamer's Den with me, your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. Finally, we are going to be continuing on with the Witch character class. In particular, we are going to be wrapping up with the Hexes section by taking a look at the greater and major hexes and which ones in particular you really want to keep your eyes on and pick up. Not only that, but we also get a number of hexes in this mix here that are just thematically appropriate. They fit a lot of old stories, fairy tales, stereotypes, so many different things about your classical Brothers Grimm witches and all those old stories. It's really good stuff here. So let's just go ahead and get right on into this then. The first one here, and this one again, is just so appropriate for a witch to have, and really it's handy to just pick up from a mechanical standpoint for your character as well, and that is the greater hex cook people. It's exactly like it sounds. You need one intelligent humanoid creature, and you also need to have the cauldron hex from the earlier list in order to get this one to work. Otherwise you can't pick this one up at all. But you take that intelligent creature and you dump them in the cauldron and cook them. You bake them into a dough to make cookies or other pastries, or I'm sure your DM will allow you to have a certain amount of flexibility with it. But once you do, you create a meal that provides a magical benefit that will last for up to 1 hour. And those benefits range for things like bear's bull strength, bear's endurance, eagle splendor, spells like that are going to provide a boost to a character's statistical modifier. And typically these spells last, a couple of minutes tops. So having them last for a whole hour is fantastic. You'll probably get through a pretty solid chunk of a dungeon or adventure, whatever it is you're doing, without ever really having to worry about recasting things. You also get other things like neutralize poison. Those that doesn't last for an hour, but it's an instantaneous effect. But God, especially in mid to later levels, how incredibly dangerous some poisons can be. It's handy to have a couple of these cookies on hand. There is one drawback, though, especially if you're not playing an evil witch, and that is knowingly killing and cooking and then devouring an intelligent humanoid creature counts as an evil act. At least it counts as an evil act for you for making use of this. If your DM is specifically playing a campaign where there's a bit more moral ambiguity, moral flexibility, a lot of gray area where there's less of an emphasis on good and evil and more of a debate and consideration of what good and evil is exactly for most of the classes, then you might be able to get away with it. But really, from a roleplay standpoint or mechanical standpoint, however you want to look at it, that's really the only drawback to this one. And then we have retribution. Retribution's another one of those that's a will save to negate, and it will last a number of rounds equal to your intelligence bonus. It's a target within 60 feet, and whenever they successfully attack and deal damage to one of your allies, they are going to take half of the damage that they deal every single time. And this will bypass damage resistance, any damage reductions, any of those kinds of things. This just immediately bypasses that. Absolutely fantastic to have, especially if you're facing an opponent that's just an absolute damage dealing monster. It's great and absolutely wonderful for you to have. Then we have waxen image. This will create a wax image of the target that you select. Will negates this, and with this you can have the target attack themselves, lay down prone, drop any objects they're holding. You can stagger or sicken them by torturing the wax image. You can force them to move. Typically attacking themselves, maybe not the best thing, but having them lay down prone, right in the middle of a bunch of your friends, or at least enemy or creatures that consider it an enemy, or forcing them to move through threatened areas, there's plenty of attacks of opportunity to be had there. That's pretty handy. Also, staggering them or sickening them will prevent them from charging, running, all these different kinds of extreme movement type of actions that they could possibly take. So that's great to have in the back pocket as well too. You can do this a number of times, again equal to your intelligence bonus, and every time you do this the target gets a will save to negate it. So honestly, this could almost be considered yellow, but because you have so many different options of what you can do with it, even if you do it and the action takes place, but then they still make their will save, having a target that's staggered or sickened for a little bit is still really useful, or forcing them to move and taking a bunch of attacks of opportunity, this still makes it worthwhile. After that, we come up to agony. This one's a fortitude save to resist, or the target will be nauseated for a number of rounds equal to your character's level, and that's specifically the witch class levels that you have. So if you're a level 12 witch, level 4 sorcerer, the 4 sorcerer levels aren't going to count, but all 12 witch levels will, and that's 12 rounds for which that the target is nauseated. Really, really great to have. The only real downside is that there's a save for each and every round to end the effect. But, depending on what you're using it on, especially if it's a creature with a low will or a low fortitude save, then yeah, you're probably going to get some decent mileage out of this. Hell, even if they have a good fortitude save, a couple of rounds where the target's nauseated and taking penalties, great to have happen. And then we move on from agony up to Ice Tomb. Ice Tomb covers a target with a storm of snow, ice, sleet, and it deals 3d8 points of damage with a fortitude save for half damage. If they fail that, though, they are paralyzed and rendered unconscious as the spell, or as this hex, encases them in freezing ice. Now, how long this lasts just kind of depends a little bit. Basic temperatures in a temperate area, it's going to last a number of minutes equal to your witch level. If you're in a particularly hot or arid area, probably about half that. But if you're in a freezing cold region, then it's potentially indefinite. It just depends on how your DM's going to rule it, but take some reasoning care with your rulings on this too. Just go by what's sensible. And then we have Hidden Home. Now, a couple of guides list this as more of a yellow kind of okay thing to have, situational, but really for me it's green. The thing is that it lets you use Mirage Arcana effects on an area around your home. Now, the reason why it's considered yellow for many is that it's situational. In a lot of games, a lot of adventurers really don't have one set place as their home. In my campaigns, it varies, but I do like having the players settle, having a base of operations, having a place they range out from. It just makes sense. It's what mortal humanoid creatures do. We like to congregate, settle down, have an area that's ours. Very few characters or people are truly at home, just wandering freely with no roots put down. Even still, even if they are the type that wander freely, having a secured, safe place to retreat back to every once in a while is great to have. And just because one character is your rangery type who's lone wolf out in the woods, braving the wilds, facing down hostile dangers at every turn, doesn't mean everybody else in the party is. It totally makes sense for a witch to have a place to set up shop at where they can do all their rituals, spells, research, create their different items and effigies. It makes sense for them to have that kind of a home base to operate out of, and having Mirage Arcana put down around the home as an illusory protective layer of defense, incredibly great to have. I consider this one more of a green, but admittedly, your mileage will vary depending on the setting. Now, after that, we come up to our last round of hexes. These are going to be the most powerful hexes in your arsenal. And first is Life Giver. Like the text says there, you want this. If you don't pick it up, you are absolutely shooting yourself in the foot and crippling not only your abilities but your team. Definitely make use of this one. You can resurrect a target with no material components and do this as a standard action. This is incredibly great to have. Definitely grab this one. It's great. Then we also have Eternal Slumber. Now this works like the Slumber Hex, will to negate, but failure puts the target in a permanent slumber until a wish spell or equivalent spell-like effect is used, or you are killed. Now, that's amazing, and this is also thematically appropriate. This fits with so many different fairy tales, so many different stories. Sleeping Beauty comes to mind. You know, the target gets put into that Snow White eats the poisoned apple, goes to sleep forever. Got Sleeping Beauty, Snow White, and the Seven Dwarfs. Both of these stories where the princess is rendered unconscious and sleeps for however long. It's great, thematically appropriate, and it's powerful. The other thing is that because it's a hex, you can use this repeatedly. So even if the target makes a successful will save to negate it, just keep hitting them with it until it takes hold and they fall asleep. I mean, why not? And then from Eternal Slumber, we come up to Summon Spirit. Summon Spirit is going to be a bit expensive. It works like the Greater Planar Ally spell, meaning once you summon this incorporeal ghost, you have to negotiate with it. And the negotiations, whatever the cost ends up being, it's still going to be fairly significant, though at this high of a level, that part shouldn't be too bad. It will still cost a pretty penny though. But in addition to this, you end up having to take one negative level in order for this hex to work. But the benefit, the ghost can be up to a maximum of 18 hit dice, and it will work with you and serve you as per the agreement it strikes with you. That's amazing. Having a 18 hit dice, well, anything is great, but ghosts, given that they're incorporeal, they can go through walls, they can spy and observe. There's so much usefulness to them. And then there's a whole host of other abilities that they can get being an undead creature. It's great. This is really a good one to have as well. After that, we have Dire Prophecy. Now, this one's not as great as these other three here, but, you know, will save to negate. The target will take a -4 penalty to attack or AC, skill check saves, and or ability checks. And you can burn it all at once to hit them with a massive penalty that lasts for one round if you decide to go that route. This one isn't bad. Debuffing and penalizing your opponents, as we've seen and I've discussed with you, is definitely useful, incredibly handy to have, although again, in comparison to the three before, not quite the same amount of oomph, but still, this one is useful. And then, well, really, for these major hexes, that's really going to be about it. There's plenty of other hexes on the list there that are, of course, thematically appropriate, but mechanically your mileage may vary. It just really depends on the situation at hand and what you're able to make use of. But if there's something else, some other hex that you see or read about that is just absolutely speaks to you, you feel like that will fit really well with your character, pick it up, you know. As with any of these guides here, this is just mechanically what I see as most effective. Really what a lot of others who have played this game, taken a look at it, studied the mechanics, this is mechanically what is typically going to be most effective, what most everybody playing will be able to get a huge amount of usage out of. That said, you know, depending on the situation, something else may come up useful, or something else just fits the theme for your character. Just makes sense for the character to have. Go with that. Use this to help build a more effective character, but make the character your own. With that, I'm all done with this part. We're going to be moving on to the spell lists for the witch character. I thought Hexes took a lot out of me. Well, spells are going to be even more because there's way more to take a look at, research, and figure out. The Player's Guide series may be getting interspersed with some other videos here and there just to buy me a little bit of time while I'm researching. But I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, go on down there and drop me a like if you're feeling up to it. And hell, if you've been taking a liking to everything I've done here so far, well, maybe consider subscribing to the channel. Can always use more members and alumni here down at the Gamers Den. We'll be happy to have you. I know I certainly will be. But with that said, I've been your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. You folks have yourselves a good night.